Hello to everyone joining me in this incredible story. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to be part of this community. If you like stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us grow together. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Are you ready for a truth that will change everything? Here we go. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment your thoughts. The night before my wedding, fate handed me a truth I never asked for. And today, I would return the favor. I never planned to become the bride who brought her fiancé to his knees. Not in marriage, but in absolute devastation. But life has a curious way of rewriting your story when you least expect it. Many people dream of their wedding day. But have you ever wondered what would happen if that day revealed the biggest betrayal of your life? And if the love of your life was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing? Oliver Maxwell and I had been together for 3 years. He was everything I thought I desired. Successful, charming, and from a highly respected family. His mother, Eleanor, had become like my own mother, filling the void left by my parents. His sister, Claire, was the best friend I never had. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. The bachelor party was at the Grand Royal Hotel, just down the street from our luxury penthouse. I hadn't planned to go there that night, but I had forgotten to give Oliver his grandfather's cufflinks, a special request from Eleanor for the ceremony. The hotel staff knew me well. Oliver and I had hosted numerous charity events there. They directed me to the private lounge without question. That's when I heard it. Oliver's unmistakable laugh, followed by words that would shatter my world. "Come on, man. You can't be serious about settling down with Sophia." His best friend, James's voice, drifted through the slightly ajar door. "Why not? She's perfect on paper," Oliver responded, his words a little slurred. "Her trust fund will help expand Maxwell Enterprises, and her connections are invaluable. Besides, she's completely devoted to me." Laughter erupted, but it was his next words that chilled me to the bone. "She's just temporary anyway, until someone better comes along. Someone more suitable for the long haul." I stood there, clutching the velvet box containing the cufflinks, as my entire world crumbled. 3 years of memories flashed before my eyes, but now they were tainted with a new perspective. The late-night business calls, the unexpected cancellations, the subtle ways he manipulated my decisions. Everything made sense. But I didn't cry. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. I went home and opened my laptop. As Oliver's business partner, I had access to everything. Emails, financial records, client information. Hours later, I had enough evidence to destroy not only his heart, but his entire carefully constructed world. Have you ever felt a moment of clarity that gives you the strength to face any truth, no matter how painful? What would you do if you discovered such a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. The wedding morning arrived with an unsettling serenity. My hands didn't tremble as I applied my makeup, a stark contrast to the shaky excitement I had imagined feeling on this day. The evidence I had gathered lay hidden in a cream-colored envelope, securely tucked away in my bridal suite. Eleanor burst into the room, her eyes shining with maternal pride. "Sophia, darling, the flowers just arrived and they're absolutely perfect." She held up my bouquet of white peonies and pink roses, unaware that it would soon become a weapon rather than a symbol of love, as my bridesmaids fluttered around me like elegant butterflies in their champagne dresses. I saw Claire's reflection in the mirror. Oliver's sister was behind me, adjusting my veil with such tenderness that my resolve almost faltered. "I can hardly believe my brother got so lucky," Claire whispered, squeezing my shoulders. "You have no idea how right you are," I thought, maintaining my practiced smile. The next hour passed in a blur of hairspray, lipstick touch-ups, and champagne toasts, which I couldn't bring myself to drink. Every notification on my phone made my heart race, not with pre-wedding nerves, but with anticipation of what was to come. My private investigator had promised final confirmations by noon. At 11:45, the text message arrived. Additional evidence secured. Reporter in position. I excused myself to the bathroom, phone clutched in my trembling hands. The screenshots confirmed everything. Oliver's offshore accounts, the diverted company funds, and most damningly, emails to his mistress, discussing their post-honeymoon plans. The same mistress who, ironically, was part of his company's board of directors. A knock on the door startled me. "Sophia, the coordinator says we have 30 minutes left," Claire called. "Almost done," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I took one last look in the bathroom mirror. The woman who stared back was not the same person who had spent the previous morning tearfully writing her vows. This woman wore her wedding dress like armor, her red lipstick, like war paint. When I emerged, Eleanor pulled me aside. "I want you to have this," she said, fastening a delicate pearl necklace around my neck. "It's been in the Maxwell family for generations. Oliver's grandmother wore it on her wedding day." The pearls felt like ice against my skin. Another family heirloom that would become part of this day's collateral damage. "Thank you, Eleanor," I whispered, hugging her tightly. "I want you to remember that no matter what happens today, you've been more of a mother to me than I ever expected." She looked at me inquisitively, but before she could respond, the wedding planner appeared, earpiece in place and clipboard ready. "Everyone in position. Guests are seated, and the groom is at the altar, Sophia." My bridesmaids lined up, their excitement palpable. Claire kissed my cheek before taking her place at the front of the line. I waited until they had all left before retrieving the envelope from its hiding place and slipping it into a discreet pocket sewn into my dress. The church doors closed behind them, leaving me alone in the vestibule. Through the heavy wood, I could hear the string quartet playing Pachelbel's Canon, the same song Oliver and I had chosen together on a rainy Sunday months ago. My phone buzzed one last time. "Reporter and photographer in position. Business partners present. Contact awaiting." I deleted the message and put my phone away. The wedding coordinator appeared beside me, radiant with professional joy. "Ready, Miss Grant?" I thought about the moment I met Oliver at that charity gala, how his smile had lit up the room. I thought about our first kiss in the rain, the way he had proposed under the stars in Andalusia, all the dreams we had shared. Then I thought about his cruel laughter from the night before, the years of lies, the carefully orchestrated deception. The church doors burst open, the wedding march began to play, and 200 guests rose to their feet. At the end of the aisle, Oliver stood tall and handsome in his tuxedo, beaming with a rehearsed charm. He had no idea that in less than 5 minutes, that smile would shatter along with his reputation, his business, and his carefully constructed world. I took my first step forward, clutching my bouquet. The weight of the envelope against my thigh reminded me of my purpose. This was not a wedding march. It was a countdown to destruction. "Yes," I told the coordinator, my voice of steel wrapped in silk. "I'm ready." Every step down the aisle brought flashes of memories, moments I once treasured, but now recognized as carefully crafted deceptions. The soft whispers of "beautiful bride" from the guests felt like bitter ironies against my skin. Oliver's smile widened as I approached, his confidence unwavering. The perfect mask of a man who thought he had fooled everyone. 3 steps from the altar, I met James's gaze in the front row. His mocking smile faltered slightly as I held his gaze, perhaps sensing something off in my expression. Beside him sat Rebecca Thorne, Oliver's business associate, in an elegant navy dress that I knew cost more than most people's monthly salaries. A dress probably bought with diverted company funds. 2 steps, and I could see Eleanor dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Claire was among my bridesmaids, practically bouncing with excitement. The sight of them squeezed my heart, knowing they were about to become collateral damage in Oliver's downfall. One last step. "You're dazzling," Oliver whispered, reaching out for my hand. I pulled back just slightly, just enough. The priest opened his mouth to begin, but instead I turned to face our audience. The envelope felt heavy against my thigh as I retrieved it, the sound of the seal breaking echoing in the sudden silence. "Before we begin," my voice carried clearly through the church, "I'd like to share some readings, not from the Bible, but from Oliver's private emails to Rebecca Thorne, dated throughout our engagement." Color drained from Oliver's face as I pulled out the first document. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while confused murmurs spread through the congregation. "My dearest Rebecca," I read in a firm voice, "once the wedding secures the merger and Sophia's trust fund is accessible, we can proceed with our original plan. She suspects nothing." The murmurs grew louder. Oliver took a step towards me, but I stepped away, pulling out more papers. "But wait, there's more," I continued, my smile sharp as glass. "Does anyone want to know about the offshore accounts? Or perhaps the creative accounting at Maxwell Enterprises? I have copies for everyone, including the representatives from the Financial Conduct Authority, who should be arriving just—" The church doors swung open at that precise moment, revealing 2 agents in suits. "No!" Oliver lunged for the papers, but I had anticipated it. I let the documents scatter, watching them float like toxic snowflakes, each revealing another layer of his corruption. The photographers I had planted among the guests captured every moment, their cameras clicking rapidly. "Sophia, please," Oliver hissed, grabbing my arm. "Can we talk about this?" I yanked myself free, facing him with all the cold fury I had accumulated. "Talk? Like you talked about me at your bachelor party? Just temporary, right? Until someone better comes along." His face turned from white to gray. In the front row, James shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's gaze. "I trusted you," I continued, my voice echoing through the now silent church. "I loved you, but you saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone, a means to an end." Eleanor stood up, her face a mask of confusion and growing horror. "Oliver, what is she talking about?" "Mother, can I explain?" "Explain the embezzlement?" I interrupted. "The affair? The planned merger that would have bankrupted dozens of families? Please, Oliver, explain to everyone exactly who you are." The FCA agents advanced, flanking the altar. Rebecca had already slipped out a side door, but she wouldn't get far. Another team was waiting for her outside. "You've ruined everything," Oliver snarled, his charming facade finally crumbling completely. I smiled, raising my hand to remove the Maxwell family pearls. "No, Oliver, you only did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who they're dealing with." The next few moments dissolved into chaos. Agents intervened. Claire was sobbing. Eleanor remained frozen in disbelief, and guests either fled or recorded everything on their phones. Despite it all, I maintained my composure, watching Oliver's perfect world crumble around him. As he was led away in handcuffs, Oliver turned one last time. "In my own way. I loved you. In your own way?" I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. "Your way was never enough. Consider this my wedding gift, the final truth about the man you truly are." I turned, walking alone down the aisle, head held high. Behind me, I could hear Eleanor's choked sobs, the continuous click of cameras, and the growing murmur of shocked conversations. But before me lay freedom, justice, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes karma needs a little help to arrive on time. Do you believe truth always comes out? Or sometimes does it need a little push like Sophia's? Which moment of this revelation impacted you the most? Share your thoughts below. The spring sunlight hit my face as I pushed open the church doors. A crowd of reporters waited outside, my final touch to ensure Oliver's downfall would be complete and public. As their questions rained around me, I smiled, knowing that while this wasn't the fairy tale ending I once dreamed of, it was something better. It was justice. The following weeks unfolded like scenes from a movie I never thought I'd star in. Headlines screamed, "Maxwell Empire Crumbles," and "Jilted Bride Exposes Corporate Corruption." My phone constantly buzzed with well-wishers and journalists, all eager to know more about the bride who took down one of the city's most prominent families. I sat in my new apartment, overlooking Regent's Park, a place I had specifically chosen because Oliver had always dismissed it as new money territory. The irony was not lost on me. My laptop displayed the latest news. Oliver and Rebecca had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The evidence I had gathered had opened a Pandora's box of corporate misconduct. Claire called daily, her voice always wavering between anger and despair. "Why didn't he tell me?" Her blind spot for her brother had always been her greatest weakness. Eleanor's reaction surprised me more. 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, she appeared at my door, carrying a familiar velvet box. "The pearls," she said, extending them. "They belong to you now." "Eleanor, I couldn't." "You exposed the truth," she interrupted, her voice firm. Despite her red-rimmed eyes, "that makes you more worthy of them than anyone who wore them before." We sat on my new sofa, drinking tea from mugs I had bought that very morning. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken words. "I failed him," she finally whispered. "At some point I must have." "No," I took her hand. "Oliver made his own choices. He had everything he needed to be a good man. He chose differently." The investigation into Maxwell Enterprises revealed deeper corruption than anyone had imagined. Oliver's father had laid the groundwork years ago, and Oliver had simply perfected the art of deception. The company's collapse affected hundreds of employees, but I had prepared for that too. Anonymous tips had helped many to transfer their investments weeks before the scandal broke. James tried to contact me once, probably hoping to save his own skin. His message remained unread in my inbox, along with Oliver's desperate attempts at explanations. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Rebecca became a witness for the prosecution. Of course, she had always been practical that way. Her testimony would ensure Oliver spent a significant portion of his prime years in a federal institution, trading his tailored suits for prison garb. James, charged as an accomplice, accepted a plea deal that included community service and hefty fines. The media painted me as a heroine, the whistleblowing bride who chose justice over love. They didn't understand it was never a choice. The moment I heard Oliver's true feelings, the path forward became crystal clear. Love without respect is like a house built on sand. It's bound to crumble. My own firm flourished afterward. Clients appreciated working with someone who had demonstrated such unwavering ethical standards. The irony was not lost on me. Oliver's attempt to use me had spectacularly backfired, catapulting me to greater success than he had ever imagined. Do you believe true strength lies in the ability to forgive, or in the courage to stand up for what's right, even if it means destroying an illusion? Leave your comments below. A month after the non-wedding, I received a letter from Oliver's grandmother. Her trembling handwriting filled 3 pages with memories of her own marriage, of watching Oliver grow up, and finally, her gratitude for preventing the family name from becoming synonymous with unchecked corruption. "You did what none of us had the courage to do," she wrote. "You saw the truth and refused to look away." The letter ended with a photograph. Oliver's grandfather on his wedding day, young and hopeful. The same hope I had once seen in Oliver's eyes. The same hope that had twisted into something darker when no one was looking. I kept the photo, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The charming smile that had once captured my heart had hidden a calculating mind, plotting my destruction. Never again would I allow someone else's mask to become my reality. As summer turned to autumn, I found myself walking through Regent's Park more often. The changing leaves reminded me that transformation, though painful, was necessary for growth. Every step forward took me further from the woman who almost married a lie, and closer to someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to be alone. Eleanor sometimes joined me on these walks. We never spoke directly of Oliver, but his absence hung between us like an invisible thread, connecting two women who had loved and lost the same person in different ways. "You know," she said during one of our walks, "I always wanted a daughter who would carry on the Maxwell legacy of strength and integrity. Turns out, I have her, just not in the way I expected." I squeezed her hand, understanding the weight of her words. By trying to destroy me, Oliver, unintentionally, had given me something precious. A family united not by blood or false promises, but by truth and resilience. The media eventually moved on to more recent scandals, but the lessons remained. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is not to say "I do," but to have the courage to say "I don't." What do you think strength truly means in a situation like Sophia's? Comment and subscribe for more inspiring stories. 6 months after the non-wedding, I found myself standing in front of the former Maxwell Enterprises headquarters. The building's gleaming facade remained unchanged, but the company name had been replaced by that of its new owners. Inside, a different kind of energy pulsed through the renovated offices, one of transparency and renewed purpose. I had been invited to consult on the company's restructuring, a delightful twist of fate that was not lost on me. The new management wanted to understand how the previous corruption had gone unnoticed for so long. Who better to explain it than the woman who had uncovered it all? Walking through the familiar hallways, I passed Oliver's old office. It had been converted into a communal workspace, its imposing mahogany doors replaced by glass panels. Sunlight poured in where shadows once lurked, a fitting metaphor for the company's transformation. Claire had taken over a small division of the company, determined to rebuild her family's legacy the right way. We had slowly mended our friendship, stronger now for having been tested. She had inherited her mother's strength, but channeled it to create positive change. "Quarterly reports show a remarkable recovery," she announced during a board meeting, her voice firm and confident. "We've retained 80% of our original workforce and implemented all recommended transparency measures." I watched her with pride, remembering the tearful conversation we'd had 3 months prior, when she had uncovered even more of Oliver's deceit. Instead of breaking her, each revelation had only strengthened her resolve to make things right. The media had dubbed it the Maxwell Redemption, a story of corporate resurrection led by the women Oliver had underestimated. Eleanor had emerged from her initial shock to become a fierce advocate for corporate accountability, using her social contacts to promote ethical business practices. My own consulting firm had expanded rapidly, specializing in corporate fraud prevention. Companies sought our services, hoping to avoid becoming the next cautionary tale. Each client brought new challenges, but none matched the satisfaction of dismantling Oliver's carefully constructed house of cards. The investigation had uncovered connections to other prominent families, leading to a domino effect of exposures and resignations. Oliver's circle of privileged conspirators had crumbled, their influence evaporating under the harsh light of scrutiny. Rebecca's testimony had proven invaluable to the prosecution. She had provided details of meetings in exotic locations, of destroyed documents and hidden accounts. Her cooperation had earned her a lighter sentence, but the stigma would follow her long after her release. James had attempted to reinvent himself as a whistleblower, claiming he had always suspected Oliver's dealings. No one believed him. Last I heard, he had moved to a small town in Montana, his dreams of social climbing buried under the weight of his complicity. Oliver's trial was scheduled for the spring. His legal team had attempted every dilatory tactic possible, but justice had a way of catching up. I had been called to testify, a prospect that filled me with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. One afternoon, as I left the office, I received an unexpected call from Oliver's grandmother. "I've been going through old family albums," she said, her voice crackling with age and emotion. "There's something you should see." During dinner at her elegant home, she showed me photographs of Oliver as a child, images of a smiling boy who once held the potential for goodness before ambition and greed twisted his path. "I saw him change," she confided, her fingers tracing the edges of a yellowed photograph. "Year after year, success after success, he became someone I didn't recognize." "You saw it too, didn't you? Before anyone else?" I nodded, remembering subtle moments where Oliver's mask had slipped. A cruel comment here, a dismissive gesture there, signs I had chosen to ignore until that fateful night before our wedding. "The Maxwell name once meant something," she continued, closing the album. "Thanks to you, Clara, and Eleanor, it might mean something worthwhile again." As I drove home that night, the city lights blurred into streams of gold and silver. I thought about legacy, not just the Maxwells, but my own. By choosing to expose the truth, I had helped create a ripple effect of positive change. The wedding dress still hung in my closet, a reminder not of what I had lost, but of what I had gained. Strength, clarity, and the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge is not destruction, but reconstruction. Building something better from the ashes of deceit. Tomorrow, I would meet with another company seeking guidance on ethical business practices. The irony was not lost on me. Oliver's betrayal had led me to my true calling. By trying to use me as a stepping stone, he had, unintentionally, helped me find my way. The night before my wedding, I had heard a truth that shattered my world. Now, 6 months later, I had helped build a new one, stronger, clearer, and far more authentic than the illusion I almost married. Do you believe that from the rubble of betrayal, a true calling can emerge? Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts. Spring arrived with an unexpected weight. Oliver's trial loomed on the horizon. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took the witness stand, my voice unwavering as I recounted every detail. His eyes never left mine during my testimony, but they no longer had the power to quicken my heart. Instead, I saw him clearly as he was, a man whose greatest defeat was being exposed for his true nature. The evidence was overwhelming. Every document I had gathered that fateful night before the wedding became another nail in the coffin of his defense. His lawyers tried to paint me as a spiteful, vengeful woman, but the paper trail told a different story, one of calculated fraud spanning years. The most poignant moment came when Eleanor testified. She sat ramrod straight in the witness box, her elegant composure intact as she detailed how her own son had manipulated family funds and betrayed generations of trust. "The truth," she stated clearly, her voice echoing in the silent room, "must stand above blood." Oliver's face crumbled at her words. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion break his rehearsed mask. The realization that he had not only lost his freedom, but his mother's unwavering support. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Each day brought new revelations, more evidence of how deep the corruption had run. Former employees testified about threats and coercion. Business partners revealed how they had been dragged into Oliver's web of deception. Despite it all, I sat in the gallery next to Claire, watching the man we had both loved reveal his darkest colors to the world. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, 15 years, with no possibility of early parole. As the judge read the terms, I studied Oliver's profile. Still handsome, but somehow diminished. The charming smile that had once conquered boardrooms, and my heart was nowhere to be seen. Rebecca, having pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for her testimony, received 5 years. She avoided my gaze as she was led away, her designer attire replaced by prison orange. James, charged as an accomplice, accepted a plea bargain that included community service and hefty fines. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Eleanor stepped forward, Claire and I by her sides. "The Maxwell family," she announced in a firm voice, "has always valued integrity above all else. Today's verdict, though painful, upholds that tradition. We thank the jury for their service and for the prevalence of justice." Later that night, we gathered at Eleanor's house, not to mourn, but to close a chapter. Claire pulled out a bottle of champagne, from the same vintage we had planned to serve at the wedding. "To the truth," she toasted, her eyes meeting mine. "And to the sister I almost had, who turned out to be more family than my own brother." Eleanor took my hand as we drank our champagne. "You know," she mused, "I've been thinking about what you said that day at the altar, about love and truth. You chose truth over love, but in doing so, you showed the greatest love of all, love for justice, for what is right." The evening softened into night. Our conversation shifted from the past to the future. Claire spoke of her plans to rebrand the remaining legitimate Maxwell businesses. Eleanor shared her vision for a foundation to support corporate ethics education. As I drove home that night, the city skyline shimmered against the dark sky. The weight I had carried since the night before my wedding finally began to dissipate. Oliver's sentencing wasn't just an end. It was permission to truly begin again. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Oliver in his prison uniform, being led to his cell. Below it, words from a sympathetic guard. "Thought you'd want to see this. Justice served." I deleted the message without replying. I didn't need to see Oliver in misery. I had already seen him at his highest, and found him wanting. My revenge wasn't in his incarceration, but in the freedom I had found by exposing the truth. The wedding dress that had hung in my closet like a ghost was finally put away. Donated to a charity that helped domestic abuse survivors rebuild their lives. The symbolism was not lost on me. What was meant to be a symbol of love and trust would now help other women write their own stories of redemption. As I fell asleep that night, I thought about the girl who had once dreamed of becoming Mrs. Maxwell. She had been naive, perhaps, but her belief in justice had been her salvation. Oliver had seen her trust as weakness, not realizing it would be his undoing. The truth had cost me a wedding, but it had given me something far more valuable. The knowledge that sometimes the best love story isn't about finding the right partner, but about finding the strength to stand up for what's right on your own. Do you believe true freedom is only physical, or is it also mental and emotional? Like and share your opinions. 1 year after Oliver's sentencing, I found myself back at the Grand Royal Hotel. Not as a soon-to-be bride, but as the keynote speaker for a conference on corporate ethics. The irony of speaking in the very building where I had overheard Oliver's true nature was not lost on me. The ballroom was packed with executives, all eager to hear from the woman who had exposed one of the decade's biggest corporate scandals. As I walked onto the stage, my heels clicking on the polished wood, I saw my reflection in the glass panels, confident, serene, and completely transformed from the woman I had been a year prior. "Good morning," I began, surveying the crowd. "You are here today because you want to learn how to prevent fraud and corruption in your organizations. But what you really need to learn is to know the truth that hides behind perfect smiles and designer suits." In the front row, Eleanor and Claire sat proudly. Claire had successfully rebranded Maxwell's remaining legitimate assets into a new company focused on sustainable investments. Eleanor's foundation had already sponsored ethics programs at 3 major universities. "The biggest threat to corporate integrity," I continued, "isn't always external. Sometimes it's the charming CEO with a Harvard degree. Sometimes it's the trusted partner with an impeccable record. And sometimes it's the person you plan to spend your life with." My consulting firm had grown exponentially with offices in New York, London, and Singapore. Companies worldwide sought our expertise in fraud prevention and corporate transparency. Each new client brought with it stories of near misses and close calls, potential Oliver Maxwells caught before they could wreak irreparable havoc. After my speech during the networking reception, a young woman approached me. Her hands trembled slightly as she introduced herself. "I'm engaged to my company's CFO," she confided. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Last week I found some discrepancies in our books. After hearing your story, I don't know what to do." I looked at her, seeing my former self reflected in her uncertain eyes. "The truth isn't any easier to speak," I said softly. "But living with lies becomes impossible once you see them." By the end of the day, another corporate fraud had been prevented, another scandal averted. The young woman's fiancé was quietly removed from his position, and authorities notified. She sent me a thank you note a month later, signed with her maiden name, and the promise to never settle for less than complete honesty. My story had become a beacon for others, a reminder that choosing truth over comfort was not just an option. It was a necessity. Business schools used the Maxwell case as a teaching tool, and I occasionally gave guest lectures, sharing insights that could only come from having loved and lost a master of deception. Claire joined my firm as a partner, her experience in rebuilding after corporate scandal proving invaluable. Together, we developed programs to help companies foster cultures of transparency and accountability. "You know," she said one night as we reviewed files, "I used to think Oliver was the strong one in our family. Now I realize strength isn't about maintaining power. It's about having the courage to expose wrongdoing, even when it hurts." Eleanor's foundation launched a scholarship program for women in business ethics, naming it in honor of Oliver's grandmother, who had passed away peacefully months after his sentencing. Her last words to me had been, "You saved our family's soul." The media still occasionally ran stories about the runaway bride who saved Wall Street, or, in our case, the financial world of London. But my life had moved far beyond that single day of reckoning. My work had evolved from an act of revenge to a mission of prevention and protection. Oliver's appeals were consistently denied. His attempts to reduce his sentence fell on deaf ears. The evidence I had gathered that night had been too exhaustive, too damning to dispute. I sometimes wondered if he ever truly understood that his downfall hadn't been caused by my discovery of his plans, but by his own belief that love could be used as a weapon. A year after exposing the truth, I stood in my office overlooking Regent's Park, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of redemption. On my desk was a framed photo of Eleanor, Claire, and me at the opening of the Foundation's first Ethics Center. Beside it, a small velvet box containing the Maxwell family pearls, no longer a symbol of betrayal, but a reminder that sometimes the most precious inheritance is the courage to stand for what is right. The truth had not given me the fairy tale ending I once dreamed of. Instead, it had given me something far more valuable, a purpose, a mission, and a united family, not by blood or marriage, but by an unwavering commitment to integrity. What do you believe is more valuable, a fairy tale ending or a life of purpose and truth? Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments. 18 months after the day I walked away from my own wedding, I received an unexpected phone call. Oliver wanted to see me. His request came through his prison counselor. "A meeting for closure," he stated. Eleanor and Claire advised against it, their protective stance evident in their worried expressions. But something in me needed this final conversation, this last piece of the puzzle to complete my healing. The prison visiting room was austere and cold, nothing like the luxurious spaces where we once shared our dreams. Oliver sat at the metal table. The orange jumpsuit contrasted jarringly with the tailored suits he once wore. His features had hardened, the polished charm replaced by a hardened authenticity I had never seen before. "Sophia," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "Thank you for coming." I sat opposite him, maintaining a composed exterior as my heart raced with memories. "Why did you want to see me, Oliver?" He lowered his gaze to his hands, the ones that had once slipped an engagement ring onto my finger. "I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about who I was, about who I am. 18 months of reflection," I pointed out. "That's a far cry from the man who thought he could get away with anything in life." "I deserved everything that happened," he admitted, surprising me with his frankness. "The truth is, I never deserved you, not because you weren't enough, but because I wasn't." The words hung between us, heavy with the weight of lost possibilities. Through the visiting room window, I could see clouds gathering, mirroring the storm of emotions in my chest. "You know the worst part?" he continued, looking up to meet my eyes. "I loved you. In my twisted, selfish way, I loved you. But I loved power more. I loved the game more. Love shouldn't be a game, Oliver." "No," he nodded quietly. "It shouldn't." We sat in silence for a moment, the distant sounds of the prison creating a grim backdrop to our final conversation. "Rebecca has been writing to me," he said suddenly, asking for forgiveness, as if forgiveness could undo what we did. I studied his face, seeing for the first time the cost of consequences on a man who had never believed they applied to him. "Are you asking for my forgiveness too?" "No," he shook his head. "I'm asking you to know that you were right, about everything. The woman who walked away from that altar was stronger than the man who stood on it." The guard signaled that our time was almost up. Oliver straightened. A shadow of his former composure returned. "I heard about your work," he said. "The Ethics Foundation, the consulting firm. You've built something meaningful from the ashes of what I destroyed." "We all have," I replied. "Your mother, Claire. We found strength in the truth you tried to bury." As I rose to leave, Oliver called me one last time. "The night before the wedding, when you heard me, was that the first moment you knew?" I paused. I turned, remembering the girl who had stood outside that door, clutching those cufflinks. "No," I replied honestly. "It was just the first time I admitted what I had always known." Leaving the prison, I felt lighter somehow. Not because Oliver had changed, or because his acknowledgement of his wrongs had given me validation. I felt lighter because I finally understood. My strength hadn't come from exposing his lies or from walking away from our wedding. It had come from choosing truth over comfort, justice over love, integrity over illusion. Eleanor waited for me in the parking lot, her presence a silent support. "Are you okay?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "Yes," I smiled, realizing it was completely true. "I really am." As we drove away, I watched the prison disappear in the side mirror. Oliver would serve another 13 years, but I was already free. Free from the weight of the what-ifs and the could-have-beens. Free from the ghost of a love that was more fiction than reality. The sky had cleared, and before us, a rainbow arched over the horizon. Nature's reminder that, after every storm, there's an opportunity for something beautiful to emerge. My phone buzzed with a message from Claire. The Foundation's latest initiative had received full funding. Life had a curious way of working out. I had lost a fiancé, but I had gained a family. I lost a dream, but I found a purpose. The night before my wedding had seemed like an end, but in reality, it had been a beginning. The beginning of a journey towards something far more precious than the fairy tale I almost settled for. The truth, it turned out, had not only freed me, it had freed us all. Do you believe forgiveness or the ability to move on is a form of revenge in itself? Leave your opinions below. And if you've enjoyed the story so far, subscribe so you don't miss the ending. 1 year after my encounter with Oliver, my life had blossomed in ways I never imagined possible. The Ethics Foundation had expanded globally, and our consulting firm had become the gold standard in corporate transparency. But it was a different kind of encounter that would mark this chapter of my story. I was giving a lecture at a prestigious business school when I noticed him in the audience, dark eyes fixed intently on my presentation, asking thoughtful questions about preventative measures against corporate fraud. He was Professor Mark Harrison, a visiting professor from a leading business school, specializing in business ethics and corporate responsibility. After the lecture, he approached me with an interesting proposition. "Ms. Grant, your experience could revolutionize how we teach ethics in business schools. Would you consider collaborating on a comprehensive curriculum?" There was something refreshingly genuine about him. No hidden agendas, no carefully crafted persona, just a sincere passion for creating positive change. Eleanor noticed it first, during a foundation board meeting where Mark presented his ideas. "He looks at you the way one should look at someone they admire," she commented afterward. "Not as a prize to be won, but as an equal to be respected." Our professional collaboration slowly evolved into coffee discussions, which stretched into dinner conversations. Mark never pushed, never rushed. He understood the weight of my past and respected the strength it had given me. Claire mercilessly teased me about the way my eyes lit up when discussing our curriculum project. "You know, Sophia, it's okay to be happy again, to trust again." But trust wasn't something I gave easily anymore. One evening, over dinner at a quiet restaurant in the Marylebone neighborhood, I told Mark everything. Not just the headlines he had read, but the raw truth of loving someone who saw you as nothing more than a means to an end. His response was simple, yet profound. "Thank you for trusting me with your story. It couldn't have been easy to share." Months passed, and our curriculum project flourished. Business schools across the country began adopting our ethics program. Mark and I spent countless hours refining case studies, including the Maxwell scandal, now taught as a historical example of corporate fraud detection. One rainy afternoon, as we walked through Regent's Park after a successful presentation, Mark stopped under the shelter of a massive oak tree. "You know what amazes me about you, Sophia?" Raindrops glistened in his hair. It's not just your strength in exposing the truth, but your courage to remain open to possibility. Even after everything, I looked at him, truly looked at him, and I saw what Eleanor had noticed months ago. Here was a man who had built his career teaching ethics, not because it was profitable, but because he believed in it. Someone who saw my past not as a burden, but as hard-won wisdom. The truth is, he continued, I've fallen in love with you. Not the headline version, but the real you. Brilliant, compassionate, and unafraid to stand up for what's right. I ask for nothing more than the chance to show you that love can be honest, straightforward, and true. Standing in the rain, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Not the naive hope of my younger self, but something stronger, tempered by experience and wisdom. Claire and Eleanor were ecstatic when I finally admitted I was dating again. Life has a way of bringing us exactly what we need, Eleanor said, squeezing my hand. Sometimes it's the courage to expose a lie. Sometimes it's the strength to embrace a truth. The Foundation's annual gala provided a perfect opportunity to go public with our relationship. As Mark and I danced under the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Royal Hotel, yes, the very same place where I had overheard Oliver's betrayal, I realized how far I had come. You're thinking about that night, aren't you? Mark softly asked. Yes, I admit it, but not with regret. That night taught me to trust my instincts, to demand truth and love. It led me here. He smiled, understanding in his eyes. Quoting your famous speech, the truth doesn't always give you the ending you wanted, but it always leads you to the one you need. As we swayed to the music, I noticed Eleanor's knowing smile across the room. She raised her glass in a subtle toast, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something beautiful from the lessons it taught you. The truth that shattered my world 2 years ago had led me to a love that didn't need to be proven or demonstrated. A love as transparent and stable as the principles we both lived by. Do you believe in second chances in love, especially after a great betrayal? Leave a comment and don't forget to like this video. 3 exact years after my almost wedding to Oliver, I stood in front of my full-length mirror, adjusting a different white dress. This one was simpler, more elegant, a reflection of the woman I had become. Eleanor fussed with my veil, her eyes shining with true happiness. This time, she whispered, everything is exactly as it should be. Claire burst into the room, champagne in hand. Mark is practically floating out there, and you should see the students who came. Half the business school came to see their favorite professors get married. The venue was not a grand cathedral like my first planned wedding. Instead, we chose the Botanical Gardens, where Mark and I had spent countless hours discussing our curriculum between stolen kisses and shared dreams. The guest list was smaller, but every person present represented a genuine connection, a true relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. Ready? Eleanor asked, offering me a familiar velvet box. The Maxwell pearls glittered in the morning light. Once a symbol of a dynasty built on deception, now they represented something different. The power of transformation, of turning pain into purpose. Actually, I smiled, closing the box gently. I think these belong to the Foundation now, a reminder of where we've been and how far we've come. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she hugged me. You truly are the daughter I was meant to have. The ceremony was everything my first one wasn't. Authentic, intimate, and filled with genuine joy. Mark's vows spoke not of possession or obligation, but of partnership and shared purpose. When he mentioned how my story had inspired him long before we met, how my courage had made him a better educator and person, I saw the same conviction in his eyes that I had seen during our first meeting. My own vows acknowledged the journey that had led me here. Love isn't about perfect moments or grand gestures, I said, meeting his steady gaze. It's about choosing truth over comfort, growth over complacency, and finding someone who makes those choices with you every single day. The reception buzzed with energy as students mingled with business leaders, all united by our shared commitment to ethical leadership. The Foundation's latest initiative, a scholarship program for whistleblowers looking to rebuild their careers, had just launched, turning another page in our story of transformation. Claire clinked her glass for a toast, her smile radiant. To my sister, not by blood, but by choice, who taught us all that the greatest love story isn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person. And to Mark, who showed that true love doesn't ask you to compromise your values. It elevates them. Later, as Mark and I swayed in our first dance, he whispered, "Do you ever think about how different life would have been if you hadn't overheard Oliver that night?" I looked around the room at the family I had found, the purpose I had discovered, and the man who loved me, not despite my past, but because of how it had shaped me. "That night didn't change my destiny," I replied. "It revealed it." News had reached us that Oliver was being considered for parole, but it felt distant, like a chapter in someone else's story. His actions had set my transformation in motion, but they no longer defined me. The woman who had walked away from a false dream had found something real, a love built on truth, a purpose born of principles, and a happiness earned through courage. As the night wound down, Eleanor pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, pressing a small package into my hands. Inside was a simple journal, Oliver's grandmother's from her early days as a Maxwell. She wrote about choosing truth over convenience, even when it costs you everything, Eleanor explained. "You're not just continuing her legacy, you've reinvented it." Looking at the guests, I felt a deep sense of completeness. The revenge I once sought had transformed into something far more powerful: redemption. Not just for me, but for everyone touched by our story. The truth that once shattered my world had finally healed it. Piece by piece, moment by moment, choice by choice. And when Mark looked at me and smiled, that honest, unreserved smile that had begun to heal my heart, I knew that sometimes the best endings are not the ones we plan, but the ones we earn by being brave enough to embrace the truth, no matter where it leads. The night before my first wedding had taught me what love was not. Every day since then had taught me what it truly is: a choice, a commitment, and above all, an unwavering dedication to the truth, both beautiful and brutal. In the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not just surviving betrayal, but learning to love again, more wisely, more deeply, and more authentically than ever. What choice do you think is the most important one in this story? Leave your comments, subscribe, and share this video. 5 years after the fateful night that changed everything, I stood at a podium in front of a packed auditorium at the business school. The faces before me represented the next generation of business leaders, eager to learn from what had become known as the Maxwell case study. Mark sat in the front row, now head of the business ethics department, beaming with the same pride he had shown on our wedding day. 2 rows behind him were Eleanor and Claire, who never missed these annual lectures. But this year was different. This would be the last time I would tell this story. "Many of you know the headlines," I began, my voice resonating through the silent space. The jilted bride who exposed a corporate scandal. The woman who walked away from a Maxwell. But today, I want to talk to you about something more important than revenge or justice. I want to talk to you about transformation. A student raised her hand. Ms. Grant, what made you finally decide to stop giving these lectures? I smiled, resting my hand instinctively on my belly, slightly rounded. Our first child, still our secret. Because some stories need to end, so new ones can begin. After the lecture, Claire joined me in my office, sitting on the edge of my desk, as she used to in our consulting days. Oliver has a parole hearing next month, she said softly. He's asked if we would speak on his behalf. The news didn't surprise me as it would have before. Time had a way of softening even the sharpest edges of betrayal. Will you? I asked. I might, she admitted. He's different now. The letters he writes aren't from the brother I knew. They're from the brother I wished I'd had. Eleanor had visited him regularly over the years, watching her son slowly shed the layers of deception that had defined him. She had shared his gradual transformation with me, how he had begun advising other inmates, helping them understand the ripple effects of white-collar crime on families and communities. The foundation had also evolved. What began as a response to corporate fraud had become a global movement for business ethics. The Maxwell pearls, now displayed in the lobby of our headquarters, had become a symbol of transformation, a reminder that even the darkest truths could lead to light. Mark found me later that night in our home office, surrounded by case studies and student papers. You're thinking about Oliver's parole, aren't you? I nodded, leaning into his embrace. I'm thinking about how far we've all come, how that night before my wedding wasn't an end at all. It was a beginning, for all of us. The next morning, I made a decision. I wrote a letter to the parole board, not to condemn or support, but to acknowledge the change. The man I was going to marry chose deception over truth, I wrote. The man you are considering for parole has chosen to face that truth. In the end, that's all any of us can do. Choose truth again and again, no matter the cost. The Foundation's annual gala was held on the eve of Oliver's parole hearing. As I addressed the crowd, I saw faces that told the story of the past 5 years. Students who had become ethical business leaders, whistleblowers who had found new purpose, families who had rebuilt themselves from the ashes of corporate fraud. 5 years ago, I thought revenge was about destroying something, I concluded. Now I know it's about building something better. The greatest revenge isn't in seeing someone fall. It's in helping others rise. Later that night, Mark and I walked through our favorite spot in the botanical gardens. The same place where we had exchanged vows, where we had first discussed the ethics curriculum, where we would now tell our families about the new life growing inside me. You know what I love most about our story? Mark said, his hand intertwined with mine. It's that it was never really about revenge. It was about truth surfacing, like a flower breaking through concrete. I thought about the journey, from the bride who had heard a devastating truth to the woman who had made that truth her strength, from seeking vengeance to finding purpose, from a shattered dream to a life more meaningful than I could have imagined. The night before my wedding to Oliver had seemed like the end of my story. Instead, it had been the first line of a much better one. A story about choosing truth over comfort, growth over revenge, and a love that didn't need to be proven, because it proved itself every day. As Mark and I walked home under the stars, I gently touched my belly, thinking about the new chapter we were about to begin. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't in the end of a story, but in the beginning of a better one. Are you ready for one final twist in this incredible story? Don't leave without liking and sharing your opinion. Full circle. It brought the most unexpected closure when, exactly 6 years after that fateful night at the Grand Royal Hotel, I received an invitation that made my hands tremble. Oliver had been granted parole, and Eleanor was hosting a small family dinner. The reason for the gathering stopped my heart for a moment. Oliver wanted to make formal, proper amends with everyone he had wronged. Mark squeezed my hand as we pulled up to Eleanor's house. Our daughter, Grace, slept peacefully in her car seat, oblivious to the weight the night carried. At 8 months old, she embodied everything pure and honest my life had become. Claire greeted us at the door, her eyes showing a mix of anxiety and hope. "He's different," she whispered as she hugged me. "Really different." Oliver stood as we entered the dining room. Prison had aged him, stripped away the polished patina he once wore as armor. His tailored suits were replaced by simple, modest clothes, but it was his eyes that showed the biggest change. Clear, direct, without the calculating gleam I remembered. "Sophia," he said softly, then corrected himself. "Mrs. Harrison, thank you for coming." Eleanor had arranged the seating carefully, Mark and I on one side, Oliver on the other, with Claire and herself as buffers. Grace's portable bassinet was by my side, and Oliver's gaze kept drifting to her, with something akin to wonder. "She's beautiful," he said during the soup course. "She has your determination in her eyes." The conversation moved cautiously, like dancers avoiding invisible obstacles. Oliver spoke of his work in prison, counseling other white-collar criminals, helping them understand the true cost of their actions. He had started a program that connected incarcerated fraudsters with their victims' families, fostering understanding and genuine repentance. "The Foundation's work reached us even inside," he explained. "Your ethics curriculum became part of our rehabilitation program. I taught it to other inmates, never telling them the case study was my own story." During dessert, Oliver cleared his throat. "I've prepared something, if you'll allow me to read it." From his pocket, he produced a worn piece of paper. "Dear Sophia," he began, his voice steady but humble. "Thank you, not for what you stopped me from doing to you, but for what you helped me become. By exposing who I was. The night before our wedding, you heard the truth about who I was then. Tonight, I want you to hear the truth about who I am now." Grace chose that moment to wake, her soft cry cutting through the emotional tension. Without thinking, I picked her up, and she snuggled against my shoulder, observing the gathering with curious eyes. "The Maxwell name once meant power at any cost," Oliver continued, looking at my daughter. "Thanks to you, Claire, and Mom, it now means integrity. The greatest gift you gave me wasn't just stopping me, it was showing me a better way to live." Eleanor dabbed her tears as Oliver spoke of his plans, working with the Foundation's rehabilitation program, using his expertise to prevent others from following his old path. He had already turned down lucrative offers that would have put him back in the corporate world. "I've learned that true power isn't in controlling others," he said, looking directly at Mark and me. "It's in controlling yourself, in choosing truth even when lies would be easier." As the evening drew to a close, Oliver asked to meet Grace. I found myself nodding, and Mark supported my decision with a gentle smile. Oliver knelt before her bassinet, his face soft with emotion. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Your mother taught me the most important lesson of my life. I hope you grow up to be as brave and true as she is." Stepping out into the cool night air afterward, I felt lighter somehow. Mark carried our sleeping daughter to the car, while I lingered on Eleanor's steps, looking at the stars. "You know," Eleanor said, joining me, "when you exposed Oliver's truth 6 years ago, I thought our family was destroyed. Instead, you gave us all a chance at something real." The night before my wedding to Oliver had shown me an ugly truth that shattered my world. But from those fragments, we had all built something beautiful. A family united not by lies and obligation, but by choice and truth. As Mark, Grace, and I drove home, I thought about the power of true redemption. Not just saying sorry, but living differently. Oliver's transformation wasn't just an end to our story. It was proof that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying someone's world, but in helping them build a better one. The truth that had once broken my heart had healed us all, in ways none of us could have imagined that night 6 years ago. Sometimes, the best endings aren't the ones we plan, but the ones we earn by facing our truths and choosing to grow from them. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of impact and redemption. Until next time.